questions. I want to welcome everybody here to the Virginia Library. Wish you a Happy New Year. First day back. I haven't had a tie on in 9 days. It's a record for me. It was a little hard this morning. Probably all of us had that going back to school feeling on Monday, January 4th, but we're here for a very important purpose, and I'm very glad that all have come to join this SRAB forum on college readiness. One theme of this forum is the work goes on. I'm in my last 2 weeks as governor, but the work doesn't stop. And the nice thing about Virginia is we're in a good place in many areas, including education, but we can't rest on our laurels. And so the purpose today, with the leadership of Dave Spence and others at SRAB, is to talk about a very important initiative, which is making sure that our students who complete high school complete with a credential that makes them instantly ready either for the workplace or for college success. You know that there's kind of a traditional cliche that is probably stated thousands of times every year in high school graduation speeches, where a student will note that the word commencement means beginning rather than ending. And it's a cliche, but like most cliches, it's stated a lot because it's true. And yet I think we've often treated a high school diploma more like an ending rather than a beginning. The graduation ceremony is a beginning, but a diploma has kind of been an ending point. And we haven't really conceptualized a high school diploma, as a beginning in the same way we would a commencement service. And so the reason that SRAB has pulled this process together, working with the Gates Foundation and other southern states, is to really wrestle with what does that credential mean, and can we make the graduation credential truly a kind of a ticket on the on-ramp, as Glenn Dubois would say, our community college chancellor, that would really almost guarantee that if you've got that ticket, you are ready either for the workplace or for college success. Tom Morris, my Secretary of Education, said something to me shortly after I appointed him to be my secretary, which I found really interesting. As you know, Tom had been a college president at Emory and Henry in Southwest Virginia. And he talked about the fact that of his students, and that is a somewhat selective school, such a high percentage of students coming to Emory and Henry as freshmen needed remedial work in order to be able to do college work. So the credential that they had received that enabled them to have access to that good college was not necessarily a demonstration of sufficient mastery that they could come in and immediately begin doing college-level work. So the purpose for this particular initiative, the College and Career Readiness Summit, sponsored by SRAB and the Gates Foundation, is to really make that credential, that high school diploma credential, meaningful in terms of starting college and starting the workplace successfully, and trying to wrestle with in Virginia, given the current state of affairs here, what do we need to do to make that happen? So, best of times, worst of times. Best of times. SRAB is having this summit in a state that is doing a lot of things right. I've been spending a lot of time, as I finish my time as governor, just thinking about where we've come in 4 years, but also where we've come since I started political life 16 years ago when I ran for the City Council of Richmond in 1994. And when it comes to education, Virginia can stand with pretty tall shoulders next to any other state. If you look at various measures of our outcomes in our K-12 system, how our students do on SAT scores, you can compare that to other states, and we do well, and relatively over the last few years, we've made some significant gains, including gains in narrowing achievement gaps between majority and minority student populations. Our Latino students on the NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Performance, perform highest in the nation in the elementary grades. And our NAEP scores generally, compared to other states, are very strong. AP, Virginia students take and pass AP exams at a rate that's third in the United States out of 50. And there's some amazing things going on just with AP all over the Commonwealth. A jurisdiction like Martinsville, which 2 years ago at Martinsville High School, 2 students were taking AP courses. Today, 2 years later, there are over 475 students at Martinsville High School enrolled in AP courses. And this kind of thing is happening all over the Commonwealth. So if you look at where we are as a state in our educational outcomes, NAEP, SAT, AP, We have some of the best schools in the United States. Education Week every year is in the habit now, and it will probably come out within the next week or so, of ranking schools states in terms of the quality of their K-12 educational systems. Virginia now is always in the top 5 when they do these rankings every year. So that's some of the good news. And yet, even in a state that's doing a lot of things right, we've got a lot more that we need to do. We have members here of our State Board of Education, Mark Embler's the chair, and Ella Ward, who I saw earlier, and there may be other members here as well that I haven't yet had a chance to visit with, but together with our Superintendent of Public Instruction, Pat Wright, and Tom Morris, our educational officials have just done a marvelous job positioning Virginia in a very good spot. We're the envy of other states educationally, and yet we know that we've got an awful lot more to do. 1 in 5 of our students don't graduate on time as they in the 4 years after they become freshmen in high school. That's a pretty good rate compared to other states, but 1 in 5 isn't anything we could ever feel completely good about. And more importantly, when our students make the transition from high school to college or high school to the workplace, we continue to find that they are not necessarily where they need to be successful. We might stand well with respect to other states, but increasingly what I find as governor doing economic development deals, for example, is that the competition is not just other states anymore. During my time as governor doing economic development work, I've worked on deals where it came down to Virginia versus Singapore, or Virginia versus Portugal, or Virginia versus Northern European countries. We're not just competing with neighboring states anymore. We have to have a human capital training system and educational outcomes that enable us to be competitive in a very hungry global market. And so that's what's very important about this effort, is to take what we've already done, the standards of learning, the enhanced diploma requirements for advanced diplomas or technical diplomas, to take that work and make sure that the credential is as meaningful as possible so that our students can compete with any around the world. This has also been an initiative that has been bubbling up in other ways with the education leaders in Virginia through what we call our P16 Council. Most states have formed P16 councils in recent years, and the goal of these councils, simply put, is to connect the pieces of the education system that may have been too siloed in the past. I found in my own kids' experience being in public schools what a huge information gap there was when the kids transferred from elementary school to middle school. Even if they were going to their neighborhood elementary and middle schools and they were only a mile apart, an awful lot of information wouldn't go with the students from one level to the next. Well, you can imagine then, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, we have leaders both of the K-12 educational system but higher ed system here. That information and expertise often does not transfer from K-12 to higher ed. And often there hasn't been the dialogue that there needs to be between K-12 and the higher ed community so that the higher ed community is communicating effectively to our K-12 system. What do students need to have when they get their high school diploma so that they can come and immediately fit in, feel confident, and be successful in a university setting? So the P16 Council that we've had at work in Virginia, and many of the members of that council here, I saw Dan Lavista earlier from Chev, that has been an important component also in working on this very important initiative. The goal is it's a pretty simple one. It's maximizing life success of our students. It's making sure that they're on a path that guarantees them that when they finish and they walk across the stage and get a diploma or another credential at a high school, that they can seamlessly make a transition to success in the next stage of their life, whether that would be work or a higher educational opportunity. And so today what we are doing is we're gathering to hear from a number of officials, first day spent with the SRIB, but then other officials, state education leaders who have been working on this career and college readiness initiative to talk about some good news, namely that Virginia is probably as well positioned, if not better positioned, than any other state to take our current status quo and convert it into a true measure of college and career readiness going forward. We've got some work to do to get there. Some work to do in a number of areas: teacher training, the way we conceive of curriculum, the way we continue to analyze and improve our standards of learning. There is work to do to get there. But we're as close as any other state, and it's an initiative that I think is going to be very important for us going forward. I do understand, I have my last cabinet meeting as governor this morning, and I have to leave to go do that. But I do understand either the Governor-elect McDonnell or a member of his team is going to be here later in the morning to talk as well. And that's a very important statement, that this work is a continuous bit of work, that there will not be any slacking up or resting on our laurels, but we're going to continue to try to be leaders by being aggressive in initiatives like this. And so let me just welcome you, and then I'll take a moment of personal privilege at the end. This may be the last time that I'll address a number of you with governor in front of my name. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to continue to be pretty active in things in Richmond and across the Commonwealth. But working with the educators of Virginia has been one of the real joys of my 16 years in elected office. I ran for city council when my oldest son, Nat, who turns 20 today, was 4 years old. And one of the things that impelled me to run for politics, and I never thought I would, was concern about the quality of public education in my neighborhood, in my city, and more broadly in my Commonwealth. And so since that time, working with Mark Embledge, who was on the school board when I was a city council member, been chairman of the Richmond School Board when I was mayor, now chairman of the State Board of Education as I'm governor, and working with so many of you, it has really been an honor. I consider it a real badge of pride that as a governor, I was an education champion first as a parent. All of my kids are public school educated, all three of them, one in college now and two in high school. So I'm not just doing this in the abstract or out of a budget book. I used to say that anything that's done in education policy in Virginia comes home crumpled up in the bottom of my kid's backpack. Sometimes they're supposed to show it to me. Usually they don't. I have to find it. But my wife and I have been huge promoters, champions, constructive critics on occasion, but passionate supporters of public education in Virginia. And it has been a real pleasure to work with spectacular educators all over this Commonwealth. When you think about where Virginia was just 50 years ago, when a smaller percentage of our kids even went to school than virtually any other state because of the controversy and all the challenge and turmoil in Virginia over something seemingly so simple as kids of different skin colors being able to be in the same class. When you think that's where we were, to stand here before you today and say that Virginia is easily one of the best 2 or 3 education systems in the nation, I mean, that is a huge, huge step. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of this generation of Virginians that finally understood the wisdom of Thomas Jefferson's original conception that public education should be at the very center of public policy. So for your personal courtesies, for showing me around when as Lieutenant Governor I visited every school system in the Commonwealth, all 134, and for the great work that you do and the example you set in the communities in this Commonwealth, I just want to say thank you and congratulations. We are building off a very high platform as we tackle this college and career readiness initiative. It's a platform that you have built, and all Virginians are in your debt for what you've done. And with that, let me now bring up Dave Spence. Dave is the CEO of the SREB, which is a wonderful educational think tank and producer of educational value in the South, and has been for many, many years. I don't know if I'm unique in that I may be one of the only people who've been chair of the SREB whose father-in-law was also chair. My father-in-law, Linwood Holton, who was a great and passionate supporter of education, public education, at a controversial time in Virginia, was chair of the SREB. And at the encouragement of my friend Mark, I worked as chair for the last year, giving up my tenure in the summer, but really came to value Dave and the work that he has done with the SREB historically throughout the South. This initiative to really focus on college and career readiness, similar to other initiatives we worked on middle school and high school literacy, other areas that we're working on, is just a tribute to the organization and today's leadership. And with that, let me turn it over to Dave and wish you a very, very happy New Year and have a great morning. Thanks.
And Governor, I know you have to leave, but you kind of stole my thunder. I was going to thank you for all that, your help and leadership with SREB, particularly this project, but also the great work on adolescent literacy. you actually chaired that committee, 25 people. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is quite a get-together. Very impressive to me. We're working with 5 or, I guess, 6 states now in this Gates-funded college and career readiness project, and I can say that this has been the most ecumenical, largest turnout of the right hearts and people to get this thing done by this summer. And if you do that, you're going to be the first state in the nation to do it. You know, we've talked a lot about this college and career readiness idea across the nation now for about 7 or 8 years, and I've been involved in it for that long, and we just don't have a state that's done it yet. And part of what I'm supposed to do in my few minutes is to talk about what it is, what we need to do. But this is very impressive. We've got tremendous leadership. You've seen from Governor Kaine, this has been one of his priorities. We have wide representation from both post-secondary education and the PK-12. Of all the talk we give to P16 movements across the country, and Virginia truly has one of the best ones, maybe one of the only ones, quite frankly, of substance. This agenda is truly one that calls for joint action in all of its steps. I do want to recognize, there's going to be a lot of recognitions here, but Superintendent Pat Wright and State Board President Mark Emlich, because they've been very, very active in this project. And in fact, and I think it is a fact, I think Pat Wright has come to understand this and grasp the intricacies of this certainly better than I have. And so I'm going to really defer a lot to her and others to explain how you're doing this in Virginia. And Dan LaVista of Chev, Dan, and Chancellor Glenn Dubois, they've taken the reins here and have pushed Virginia ahead of other states in this project. So it's the other thing I do want to mention, as the governor did, is the P16 effort here in Virginia. And I don't think Secretary Morris can be here today, but he has been very, very supportive of all this work as well. Final, but just as important, some recognition. We have state board members here from SREB. They're my bosses. I see Steve Kaine over there from Clifton, Virginia. Steve, thanks for being here. Chris, I think Delegate Kristen Amundsen is here, a board member. Thanks, Chris. Is Dr. Rohn, Henry Rohn, here from VCU back there? Thanks for being here, Henry. And I know I saw Delegate Bob Tata, who's been active in SREB, and it's good to see you. And I heard that Senator Ed Houck might be here as well at some point. So this is just a great turnout, and thanks for all the support. What I'm supposed to do in 10 minutes, and I've taken already 4 of them, is describe the purpose and the scope of this whole effort, and also just start to get into at least mention the specific steps that we think is very important to be part of this project. A little bit about where Virginia stands in the project, but that's going to be up to Pat and Dan and Glenn and others to talk about that in more detail. First, the purpose and the scope. Broadly, it's to prepare higher percentages of high school graduates to be ready to begin post-secondary education successfully, and more specifically, to succeed in those first-year courses. Okay, that's what this is about. Negative way to put it is to start without needing remediation. Okay, and this is particularly critical, as Governor Kaine mentioned, if we're going to increase the rate at which numbers of which students actually earn a degree or certificate after high school. As some of you know, we have actually fallen behind about 15 other countries, developed countries in the world, in terms of the percentages of our young people, 18 to 34, actually earning something. we're okay on access many times. We don't want this to affect access at all. We want to increase it, as a matter of fact. However, we are falling behind other countries, and we know that being ready to succeed, be ready to study at that higher level in post-secondary education is one of the single most important factors. I think it's the most important factor, along with affordability, to actually being able to earn a degree or certificate in post-secondary education. So that's why it's important. We also know that nationally, most high school graduates who enroll in college are not truly prepared. And when I say prepared, often even if they've taken the right courses, which is absolutely essential, the right courses in reading, math, science, and English, and so forth, a high percent are not ready if we apply the same good standards across all high school graduates. Now, what Governor Kaine said is true. Virginia is a leader in this. All the more reason for Virginia to be an example of a state that takes this very seriously, recognize there's still a ways to go, and to do this even better. Who are the students that we're talking about here? Well, we're talking about students who either have not taken or succeeded in a college preparatory curriculum, and we know what that is. Virginia's pretty good at that now. Other states, we're making progress in the nation, more students taking the math and the English and so forth that's needed. And have not developed the reading, writing, and math skills needed to truly succeed, in college and university coursework. And that's what the focus of this project is. I want to be very clear. You've got to take the right courses. Okay, we need students to take the right courses. But we know from studies, I was the academic officer at California State University. By law, you couldn't get in one of our 23 campuses unless you had a B high school average and had taken the right courses, including up through Algebra 2. 68% needed remedial education when we tested their reading, writing, and math skills. I have no reason to believe that that's different, really, in any other state. So you have to take the right courses, but this project is about as much or more the reading, writing, and math skills that are actually developed and so critical. One final, more general point, and we've found in our work with the states, it's very important. This is not about admissions, and maybe Paul will talk a little. This is not. We don't want to affect access in any way. We want to increase it. This is not about admissions. This is about what happens to a student when they're tested after they get in, admitted, and we find they're not ready. I look at Glenn Dubois, the placement testing, the readiness testing. So we think it's important to not confuse this with admissions. We do not want this to affect access in any way negatively. Now, just in the couple of minutes I have left, let me just talk about the steps. You have a handout. I believe that we try to keep it to 3 pages. It talks about the purpose, but more important, the concrete 5 steps that are part of this agenda. You'll see the first one, it talks about the standards, setting standards for reading, writing, and math, assuming the right courses are taken, having post-secondary education, all post-secondary education, all public schools agreeing on one set of reading, writing, and math standards, both in terms of content, what are they, the description, but also performance expectations. Second step, once these standards are in place, and that's a mouthful, it really takes some doing, some kind of school-based assessment or test which will give a student an idea, certainly before the senior year, about whether or not they have met the standards already. Okay? Very, very important. One of the points here that I'll make in a second in my final wrap-up is that these kinds of tests need to be tests that exactly measure the standards that you have chosen. We've found out the ACTs, the SATs, these are too general. They don't really get at the kinds of standards we're talking about. Third step is the development of what Pat would refer to as capstone senior year 12th grade courses that are aimed directly on these reading, writing, and math standards to help students who have been assessed as juniors or earlier as not having met these standards, so that we can help these students before they enter post-secondary education. Fourth step, and this is very key, is we refer to it as teacher development in the public school. It's a very positive term. Teacher development goes on the whole time. It refers to both practicing teachers and the preparation of prospective new teachers, making sure that every teacher in our schools knows what these readiness standards are, reading, writing, and math, the performance expectations, and how to teach them effectively. We think because of these targeted standards, which will have the full agreement among all of post-secondary education and all the public schools, that we can get professional development and new teacher preparation that targets these standards and development that can be very effective. And fifth, accountability. You know, I know but it's important. School accountability for increasing the percentages of high school graduates that actually meet these standards now that we have them. All right, very important. Virginia, as some of you may or may not know, is a leader in broadening its school accountability programs process so that it includes things more than just minimums. All right, minimum high school graduation requirements and so forth. And it's very, very important that public schools, that high schools are held accountable for increasing percentages of students who meet these standards and are truly ready for college. There's also an element here about accountability for colleges. And some of us have come to believe, and it's a little more controversial, that until higher ed institutions are held accountable for graduating and actually helping students complete degrees or certificates, that they will not take this whole emphasis on readiness as seriously. Now, I'm not sure. I have not found that, quite frankly, in Virginia. I've found in Virginia that the higher ed people have really taken to this idea as a win for everybody. But that's another point. We think all these steps are needed in this to make this a truly systemic, comprehensive kind of thing. The one thing I will say is it all depends on having this complete agreement on standards in reading, writing, and math up front. Finally, before asking Pat to come up and give some more detail, let me just make a couple more points about standards. This is the key to this initiative, is agreeing on these standards. Not just the content of the standards, but the performance expectations. One set, as I've said before several times, exact standards, not standards that you get from some other place, some other state, so forth, okay? These need to be standards that are adopted by your state board of education, wherever they come from. They need to be your own standards, and they need to be higher education standards, and Glenn applied and placement testing, and all these other things. I mean, these are the standards that need to be used. In terms of assessment, Virginia has some tremendous advantages going, not just with standards where Pat's going to tell you about how the SO standards of learning have already been blessed by Achieve and College Board and other groups. In terms of assessment, you're a leader in end-of-course testing. And we think in Virginia that the use of your end-of-course testing, the SOL testing in English 3 and Algebra 2, I think that's what you call it, that can be used as a basis for this kind of readiness testing, okay? And one of the things that's going on now is the development of correlations between certain scores on these English 3 and Algebra 2 SOLs and success in first-year coursework. And that's why Virginia has a leg up on this kind of thing. The only thing that I'll just exhort you to do, okay, the team that's working on this, when it comes time to really set qualifying scores or scores on these English 3 and Algebra 2 in terms of readiness for college, make sure the scores are high enough. That it really means that you can begin college, next week and have a real good chance of doing well. In terms of the 12th grade courses, the professional development, this is essentially what we need to do in the time remaining in this case. This money runs out in the summer, okay? We could get an extension, but we don't want an extension. We want to get Virginia, we want Virginia to get across the line, okay, by this summer. And there's going to be some heavy work, but good work that needs to be done as soon as these standards have been agreed to in the next month or two in terms of the development of these 12th grade capstone courses and the teacher professional development plans. So that's my summary. Virginia's going to do this. It's so good to see everybody pulling together on this project, and I want to introduce now Superintendent Pat Wright, and I'm going to listen very, very closely because I learn something new and good about this project every time I hear it. So thank you very much.
Good morning, and thanks to all of you for being here on such a cold Monday morning, and Happy New Year. The team was talking right before we were to start, and they were all wringing their hands saying, I don't know how I'm going to take up the amount of time that I've been allotted. They said, I can't possibly talk for 10 minutes, so stretch it out. And they said, well, I know I can't talk for 15 minutes. Dave, I said, Dave, I have heard you talk. I know you can talk for 15, 20 minutes. So I already scaled back my presentation by 5 minutes anyway. And so it's a good thing that I did. But Dan follows me, and Dan has assured me, and President Tribble, that they said they can't use their time, so I'm going to do like Dave did, probably just entrench on your time, and then let Glenn do the cleanup. That's exactly right. No, it is great to be here this morning in such a very important topic. The first thing I want to do is to thank my state board members. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your insights, your vision. It has truly been a pleasure working with the State Board of Education. Much of what I'm going to talk about this morning is really due to the good policy work of the State Board of Education, supported by our General Assembly, implemented by our excellent educators in the field. The great thing about being state superintendent is I get to talk about all of your work, from superintendents, principals, teachers, to all the policy makers. Mark Imlich is a special friend, a special board president, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Mark for your 8 years. I know you think it's been 8 long years on the State Board of Education. 4 years serving as president of the board. Mark is term limited and will be going off the board last meeting next week, and he's been counting the months. No, Mark has done a tremendous job. I remember the first time I met with Mark after assuming one of my various roles over the years, and Mark had just come into the presidency of the state board, and Mark said he wanted his theme for the 4 years to be building on the successes of the standards of learning. And I knew once he said that I had a soulmate. I knew I had a soulmate because it's been my experience that administrations that build off of successes get further down the road. When you try to start everything new, when you try to start fresh, thinking that new and different is better, it tends to take you a while, but generally you find that it's always better to start with something that is working. I can tell you that I go all over this country and talking about Virginia's Standards of Learning Educational Accountability System, which is a mouthful. But it really all fits together. You can't talk about the content standards without talking about the accountability system. And the assessment program is a critical part of our accountability system. We are deeply indebted to our state board, both the current board members and former state board members, to our state policymakers, our legislators, our local governing bodies, and obviously our educators and parents for staying the course on a program that is working. Certainly it has had glitches over the years, but good leadership means providing flexibility when it's needed and increasing rigor when it's needed, and our policymakers have done both when the times call for such actions. And so it's indeed a privilege that I have to talk about Virginia's educational accountability system. When Dave and I first started talking about the College Ready agenda, and we started taking notes on where Virginia is, where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go, we quickly found out that on the roadmap for college readiness, Virginia is already well on its way to having implemented a College Ready agenda. And so rather than starting at the beginning, we decided to start in the middle. We looked at the work that had been done on standards of learning, the content standards, and we reflected on all the external validations that have taken place over the last 3 years. In January of 2007, and it seems such a long time ago now, but in some ways it was only a short time ago. In January 2007, the State Board of Education, through a policy action, authorized the Virginia Department of Education to work with the State Council of Higher Education Virginia staff, research organizations, and ed organizations to conduct a series of post-secondary readiness studies. Post-secondary readiness studies. Starting with a complete analysis and an external validation of our current standards of learning in English, reading, mathematics, writing, and to also look at our end-of-course exams, to make sure that our end-of-course exams were giving us the best bang for the buck. Our students take a lot of tests. Our high school students take a lot of end-of-course exams. And then they enter post-secondary institutions and they take placement exams. Many of them take placement exams. That's a lot of testing. So the board was interested in whether or not we could use end-of-course exams to help predict college readiness, to help predict entry success in a 2-year or a 4-year institution. So it's a hypothesis, so to speak. And we have been working on this hypothesis for 3 years, and I am very hopeful that by spring and summer there will be some concrete conclusions. But the analysis so far are very, very positive. And I'm going to share some of the preliminary findings with you today. And obviously I would not be sharing preliminary findings with you unless our research staff, Deborah Jonas and Todd Massa, had authorized me to speak of such things. I want to give a special recognition to 2 staff members, one from the Department of Education, one from the State Council, who have worked in partnership for over 3 years on this one initiative, trying to maneuver through privacy issues, data linking issues, and every step of the way have agreed to the methodology and the terms. Deborah Jonas, my Executive Director for Research and Strategic Planning, and Todd Massa. Todd, I don't know what your official title is. I just know you as the researcher at SHEF. So would you please stand, both of you? Because everything that I'm talking about today really is credit to the great work of this individual. So when we talk about P16 collaboration, it really does begin in the state offices and it reaches out into the school divisions. Well, let me just describe in a nutshell what these post-secondary readiness studies were about and what we are aiming to show. The first thing that the state board wanted to do was to have a complete analysis of our middle and high school standards of learning for English, mathematics, writing, and looking at it from the eyes of being college and career ready. Because every 7 years the board is charged with reviewing and revising as necessary our standards of learning. And of course that leads to revisions in our assessments, which leads into obviously an impact on school accountability. So before the board wanted to take on its normal SOL review process, it wanted external validation. So we worked with the College Board and we worked with the ACT. They independently reviewed our English, math, science, English, math, and writing, science came on later, independently reviewed our standards of learning against their college-ready standards, their benchmarks, and they each have separate ones. Although there's similarities in the two sets from the College Board and ACT, there are differences. Each of those organizations provided a summary to us and indicated to us that our current standards of learning were significantly correlated to their college success standards, so that we knew from the very beginning that we had a basis to build off of. We had a basis to build from, and we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We didn't have to toss out the standards of learning and start from scratch. We also, at the same time, in cooperation with the P16 Council, entered into an agreement with the Achieve and the American Diploma Project for a third independent analysis of our standards of learning for those same subjects. This process brought in institutions of higher education from all over the Commonwealth. We had teams of faculty members from these institutions reviewing our standards of learning against the ADP, American Diploma Project, benchmarks. And then an alignment team was convened to work with the Achieve staff to make recommendations on filling any gaps that might have existed between our current standards and where we need to go. That process resulted in similar findings and conclusions as the College Board and the ACT process. So out of the 3 independent analyses, we ended up feeling very comfortable that our standards of learning in those areas were already well aligned with college success standards. But each of those organizations made suggestions for filling a few gaps to further the alignment. And so the rest of the story is, next week, the State Board of Education will receive the final set of standards of learning in English and in science that have been validated by these external organizations as college and career ready and vetted through our normal K-12 process. Because as Dave said, unless you've got buy-in from educators on the ground, from the practitioners, you're not going to implement standards. And so it was very important to us to have the external validation on the front end, feeding that information into our K-12 committees to end up with the recommendations that went to the board as draft in November, and now will be up for final review in January. So, where do high school assessments come in? Well, you can't have valid and reliable assessments unless you have solid standards. The assessments are only as good as the standards. So we knew from the very beginning, because our current standards of learning had been validated, that working to show a correlation between our end-of-course exams and college readiness was going to be a valid process. Todd and Deborah have worked diligently working with the Regional Educational Laboratory, Appalachia. We've worked with the College Board. We've worked with Virginia Tech, with all the researchers. And we're at a point now where we can show a correlation between SAT scores and advanced proficiency scores on the end-of-course exams. We can show a correlation between our advanced proficiency scores and our advanced diploma and college readiness. We can also show that there is a relationship between students who meet the benchmarks for the SAT and ACT will be college ready. Now, this doesn't mean that they will graduate from college. It means that the handoff should be smooth. Because once a student enters college, there's still a lot of hand-holding, a lot of support work that needs to take place. So what we have tried to do in this study is to demonstrate that our end-of-course exams mean something. And we want to send a strong message to high school students that if you work hard and you work for those excellence goals, not just passing the exams, but you shooting for the highest level of proficiency, which is advanced proficiency on these exams. If you work hard and you achieve advanced proficiency on these end-of-course exams, coupled with the right course-taking patterns, you have a running start at being successful when you enter college. We have taken lots of data. We've been able to take the National Clearinghouse data that has about 92% of all college students in that database. We have taken the College Board data of Virginia students, and the last mile, so to speak, is to finish up the linking of de-identified data that the DOE and SHEV has on actual students. And so what I say to you this morning is that there is a lot of policy work yet to be done. But if we can actually demonstrate that K-12 and post-secondary work together, and we agree that there are some key indicators for college readiness, and some of these indicators will be in the portfolios, in the profiles of students when they graduate from high school, then perhaps we can save our students from having to take more and more exams, which are getting more costly as the minute goes by, and that we can have a smooth transition from high school to post-secondary. There will be a more detailed report issued to the State Board of Education. We will be sharing this, obviously, with the state councils and then the Virginia Community College system. And by spring and summer, Deborah and Todd, we should be at a point where we can finalize the policy recommendations. Thank you for being here today. The work has just begun. You know, we all know that standards and assessments are just two components of an accountability system. The next step is driving resources to the classroom, because you can have the best standards and the best tests in the world, but if you don't have a delivery system, the system that can support teachers as they deliver the instruction in the classroom, then all you have are good documents and good tests. We need to maximize the good policy work by taking the next step. And also we plan to work with S3B, and we're working on a Race to the Top application that will indeed take this good work and start driving the resources to the classroom. Thank you.
Well, good morning, all. Didn't you enjoy Pat Wright's comments about the time we each have? I don't know whether my job now is to speed up or slow down. So I'm going to try to shoot for the middle. But before I do that, I want also to echo some of the comments of previous speakers about the tremendous importance of both the size and diversity of this audience. Because as you may or may not know, seated among you are not only representatives from different sectors of education, but we have representatives from the General Assembly, we have people from business, different boards. And how great that combination of types of people is in terms of having a forum now to explain what good news we have, and much of it, as you're hearing, is good news, and to know with confidence that many of you can take this back to your respective environments, talk about it with your colleagues. Again, thank you so much for being here today. Within this robust group is a set of folks I'd like to introduce to you. Christine Milliken, the chair of the State Council, is here. Thank you, Chris, for attending today. And James Dyke, also a council member and former education secretary, has joined us as well. My job, in some amount of time, briefly, is to share with you one of two perspectives from the higher education side. And I'd like to do that by maybe just referring to something that, in the minds of many of you, I think is a pretty obvious thing. And that is that almost daily we hear proclamations in our culture that our economic and perhaps our national future depends essentially on turning more and more people through education and more people through workforce training. About a month ago, to give you an example of this, President Obama, at the first of his White House job summits, called specifically on educators to take the lead He was very focused in the request. He said he wanted to know what universities could do to better support and prepare our workers, not just for the jobs of today, but for the jobs 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 50 years from now. Well, if the key to, well, everything is the production of more holders of post-secondary degrees and certificates, then it of course makes sense to start with the preparation and the readiness of our citizens for the worlds of higher education and work. As has been noted, under the great leadership of Governor Kaine and Secretary Morris, Virginia, I think, truly recognized the importance of college and career readiness in its formation of the P16 Education Council. But as Dave pointed out, many states did that. Our state leadership cultivated that council, made it work productively. And I think the council has, as part of its legacy under Governor Kaine, the demonstration to all educators at various sectors that the importance of seamless cooperation, of partnerships, those are essential to the kinds of progress, the kinds of gains that Pat Wright has outlined. Indeed, I think as a member of the council, when I reflect on that cooperation and partnership theme in our work with Achieve Incorporated, I think indeed the Commonwealth can lay claim to the view that we've made great strides in recent years in aligning our curriculum and agreeing on curricular content. There was, by the way, a point of the earlier comments that was passed over, I thought, too lightly. I say this with a little tongue-in-cheek, because I think if nothing else, the P16 Council has been successful in getting faculty to talk to each other, both across disciplines, across school districts, across colleges and universities, and across what one might call the secondary, post-secondary divide. And I think this is no small achievement, as many of you in education can attest. It is that separation between K-12 and higher education that we must now continue to bridge in order to be truly successful in this initiative. I'd like to drive a stake in the ground and say that we should take care to define our roles. Readiness is not simply a K-12 issue. The involvement of higher education is essential if we are to be successful in preparing Virginians to receive and benefit from the education and training that will be necessary to carry us forward. Nowhere is this involvement more essential than in the development of readiness standards, as you have heard, in reading, writing, and math. Education faculty, as well as faculty in individual disciplines, will be key participants in the development of these standards. And the involvement of higher education will also be essential in the preparation of new teachers who understand and are committed to readiness standards and who can teach them effectively. Just as essential, I think, and you may have seen this in the outline, is the role that higher education will play in the professional development that will be needed for current teachers. And here I think the wonderful teacher education programs in our colleges and universities will be key. Higher education can also play a key role in assisting with the development and implementation of the new 12th grade readiness enhancement courses and activities that will begin, as Pat noted, after the 11th grade readiness assessments begin. And here again, faculty in education and different disciplines will be key to the effort. Lastly, higher education can assist with the assessment of results, both at the K-12 level and in the first year courses and remedial classes. The State Council of Higher Education stands ready to assist in this effort, bringing to bear expertise like you just heard in the way of Todd Nass's particular contributions. As I reflect on a recent meeting that Dave Spence and I had with the public colleges and their presidents, I should say, I believe that the leadership of Virginia higher education is open to and up to this challenge. And you know, if you think about it, even before the P16 Council and the Higher Education Restructuring Act came about, our public colleges and universities were involved with their local school districts in many positive ways. The goals and standards of the Restructuring Act have strengthened and have expanded these connections, and I'm confident that the readiness effort we're embarking upon now will further connect Virginia's secondary system with its public higher education system and yield many positive benefits. I want to conclude with a little bit of history. You may not realize it, but today's date marked a turning point in the history of both post-secondary and secondary education in the United States. 45 years ago today, January 4th, 1965, Lyndon Johnson's State of the Union address outlined his Great Society proposals. Among them, something we take for granted today, was federal education funding. From Johnson's proposals on this date followed the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, the Higher Education Act of 1965, the National Teacher Corps, and the Head Start program. I believe that what we are beginning here in Virginia today with this Readiness Summit will yield results for the Commonwealth that will be of as much value to us as those initiatives have been to our nation. And I believe that Virginia higher education can and will contribute much toward these most worthwhile goals. And now with thoughts on readiness from an institutional perspective, here is my colleague and Christopher Newport University President, the Honorable Paul S. Tribble, Jr.
Many years ago, the people of Virginia took a great leap of faith and sent a young Paul Tribble, age 29, to the United States Congress. And when I arrived, I found there were two young congressmen almost identical in age. In fact, there are just a few weeks that separate us. One young congressman from Tennessee, a fellow named Al Gore. Another young congressman from Indiana, a fellow named Dan Quayle. And it was actually written about us then that one of us would become president. And I did, president of Christopher Newport University. And I must say, I've never been happier, and I've never thought I was about a more important task than leading this young, vibrant university. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today. What brings us together is a shared commitment to enhancing the ability of our students to flourish in college and to succeed in careers in an increasingly competitive world. In Virginia, we have much to celebrate. But as the governor said today, quite candidly, a bright and promising future for our country, for our Commonwealth, and our fellow citizens demands dramatic improvement. Virginia cannot lag behind other countries. Virginia cannot lag behind other states in producing highly skilled workers and deeply informed citizens. This year, CNU will receive over 10,000 applications for a freshman class of 1,200 students. The average SAT score, critical reading, and math will exceed 1,200. The average high school GPA, 3.7. Every year we ask our freshmen, how many hours did you spend on your schoolwork each week in high school outside of the classroom? The answer, 3 hours. 3 hours. These CNU students require no remediation. They come from the ranks of your best students. But how can we expect most students to succeed when a high school diploma can be purchased so cheaply? I'm encouraged this morning by the words of Pat Wright, our distinguished State Superintendent of Public Education. And I'm also encouraged by the words of your report. And let me quote, setting post-secondary education readiness performance levels on reading, writing, and mathematics skills that more validly predict first-year success will require higher standards that are now in place. It is almost a certainty in any state that this level of readiness standards will be much higher than the performance currently required for high school graduation. That's good news, especially in a state when so many of our schools are so very selective. The great tragedy in America today is we ask so little of ourselves and our fellow citizens. My experience, and I'm sure it's yours, is that if we ask people to give their very best, if we have very high expectations, people will astound us with their success. For a number of years, I chaired the Council of Presidents of the public colleges and universities and served on the P16 Council. Those experiences convinced me that we are well positioned in Virginia to embrace these proposals and achieve an important measure of success. First, in Virginia, there is a remarkable degree of respect and cooperation between all sectors of the public education community. K through 12, the community colleges, our four-year schools, Chev, members of the executive branch, and the General Assembly. That is not the case in every state. It is the truth and the reality in Virginia, and it bodes well for this effort. Moreover, the commitment to academic excellence is held by Republicans and Democrats. I was struck by the report's finding, and we heard these statements again today in Pat's presentation, that Virginia is well ahead of many states, if not most states, because of our standards of learning. Imagine our standards of learning that already contain an essential core of standards that can be used to determine students' college readiness. This reminds me that in recent years we've been well led by Democrats and Republicans. In recent years, the administrations of George Allen and Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, working with members of the General Assembly, have contributed immensely to our success. And I'm confident that Governor-elect McDonnell will carry on that tradition as well. Finally, let me say a word about higher education community. My colleagues are passionately committed to providing higher educational opportunities to more and more Virginians. This year, we joined the Virginia Business Higher Education Council in launching the Grow by Degrees campaign. We advocate an ambitious strategy for Virginia, and it's been embraced by our new governor. 7 policy priorities for Virginia's future. And first and foremost, among those priorities is the awarding of 70,000 more degrees over the next 10 years. That's 70,000 more associate, bachelor's, and graduate degrees by the year 2010. That ambitious goal can only be met through the shared commitment and partnership of the higher education and K through 12 communities. That ambitious goal can only be met by making this initiative that brings us together today an all-important part of that strategy. We cannot succeed without success in this initiative today. So I'm here to say, count us in. All of us in higher education, all of us, presidents, faculty, staff, deans, provosts, we want to be a part of this process and we want to contribute to its success. Led, I'm sure, by our able chancellor of the Virginia Community College System, Glenn DuBois, and empowered by the good work of the State Council of Higher Education. We look forward to working with all of you to shape well-defined and higher college readiness standards, curriculum and programs to teach and assess student skills, and enhance teacher preparation. And we are committed to better aligning our programs to create a seamless and successful path from high school through college and beyond. Glenn Dubois.
Thank you, Paul. I'm delighted to be with all of you. This is quite an impressive audience. It's kind of stunning for me, just coming off of a week's vacation riding bicycles and reading books, to be in the presence of this talented group. Gary, thank you for being here, our chairman of the state board. Drove all the way from Pulaski to be here to demonstrate the board's commitment to this collaboration. I have a couple of parts. As you can see, I'm going to talk about some of the things, some of the promising practices that our community college, some of our colleges are doing with our high school partners. I'm also going to kind of start to wrap up the program by talking about what's ahead. And then I've been asked to introduce the Governor-elect Bob McDonnell, and that will certainly be my privilege to do so. Last year, in the last 12 months, this is good news, about over 20,000 Virginians came into post-secondary education in the public sector, new to college, all levels, graduate school to undergraduate. Of that 20+ thousand, 16,000 chose a community college for a number of reasons. Of that 16, approximately half will need remediation, primarily in math. So when Dave Spence came to me about a year ago, he said, would you like to get involved in this initiative to help more young people get prepared to go on to college? I didn't flinch. I said, absolutely, count us in. Because really, our connections with high schools are everywhere. They're deep. Our connections with universities are now guaranteed. We probably have the best transfer environment in the country. So we were delighted to jump in and participate. I like to personally look for problems as an opportunity for some innovation. I think some of our best practices come out of trying to solve problems. I want to tell you the story of one problem that came into my office in about the year 2003. I was a relatively new chancellor, having arrived in 2001. And I was visited by 4 K-12 leaders. And they were somewhat angry. And they came into my office and said, look, you're the chancellor of this community college system. Our relationship with your community colleges where we live is inadequate. It's confusing. The sign doesn't seem to say welcome. We want more of our young people to go to college. Now, what are you going to do about it? And at that point, I said, let me give you an idea. Tell me what you think. How about we put our community college right in your high school? That we have a community college office in your high school, staffed with our professional, the community college professional. Now, before Virginia, I was in charge of the community college system in New Hampshire, and I used to talk about having a community college in high school, and they thought I had 3 heads. I mean, they said, why would we want to do that? You know, we need more guidance counselors. Then I finally gave up. But this was an opportunity where I thought I'd plop it down and see what the reaction was. And I was bracing to be laughed out of the room, and I've been laughed out of plenty of rooms. Instead, the top leader of the group said, when do you want to start? And I said, this is not a setup in the cafeteria on Friday with a table. I want an office right on in Times Square. They said, when do you want to start? I was not expecting that kind of response. I thought it would be much more defensive. When do you want to start? Well, here we are about 6 years later, and we now have the career coach, our community college career coach, in over 150 high schools on about a 20, 25-hour basis. And what has happened? After 1 year of a career coach, we have seen post-secondary participation rates increase on average about 8%. And in rural Virginia, much more. And we're looking at a high school where we're seeing post-secondary participation rates stagnant for a decade. One-year career coach, boom, we see post-secondary participation rates increase dramatically in some places. And I'm delighted that some of our career coaches are here today in the audience. Last year, remember, the game now is not just getting them in, it's getting them out with a post-secondary credential that's worth something in the marketplace. Last year, we asked all of our college presidents, 23, to sit down with their superintendents and to share with them the data, to reveal to them how many of their high school graduates that have now entered into our sector, our college, how many of them need remediation. And that, my friends, was not a conversation our presidents were looking forward to having. But they entered into that context, not pointing fingers, but they entered into it saying, look, these are our students, they're your students, this is what the data looks like. Half of your students need remediation, mostly in math. What can we do about it? How can we help? And we now have some interesting, promising practices. And I'll just briefly highlight two. One at Blue Ridge Community College, John Downey's here, and the other at Northern Virginia Community College, and I see John Dever. We brought together our math doctor. We said, what can we do? How can we help get your students better prepared to be successful in that college math course when they get here? What they agreed to do was to allow us to come in and assess at the junior year, not on how well they might be doing on an SOL, but how prepared they were to take our placement test. So according to our assessment, they were going to be successful in the math course. So that kind of changed the game in helping get their students prepared to successfully complete our assessment test and be successful in that math course. So we're now doing assessments in the junior year. When we find that the students are deficient, now both faculties have designed, our faculty and theirs have designed transition math courses to be taken in the senior year. So it's an interesting collaboration. It's bringing together in a very cohesive way math faculty members. That, and with our career coaches, our relationship is enhanced. And I think we're on to something. But the road ahead is going to be even more difficult. If you were born between the years 1946 and 1964, you represent the baby boom generation, the best educated generation in America's history. The best educated generation in America's history. And unless we change the future, we're about to be replaced with a generation less educated. Now that should wake us all up everywhere. So the stakes are much higher. It's now not just competing with North Carolina, as the governor said. It's now competing with the world. And the good thing, John, now will go to where the talent resides. I like to say, we do need new roads. We need to get that done. But the big infrastructure issue that will be the most important to Virginia, this nation, is how well we prepare our intellectual outcomes. That's going to be the key. And the world has caught on, or some of the world has caught on. They don't want to catch up. They want to pass us. They've learned from us. Now they want to beat us. And some of them are. I never thought in my lifetime that we would no longer be number one in the proportion of population that held post-secondary degrees. I never thought that that would be possible. All my life we were number one. Well, we're not two. In the day kind of ended out, we're not four. We've kind of drifted down to 12, 13. So the stakes couldn't be higher. couldn't be higher. Our view of the community college sector is we want all young people to be prepared to go to college. We don't believe 12th grade is the finish line anymore. And we'll do anything that we can to help increase access and to help our friends in K-12 help them better prepare students so they're successful. Our problem is not just getting them in. Our casualty rate is too high in community colleges, not just here in Virginia, but nationwide. Only about 60% of our students are successful. We now talk about success as completing a post-secondary credential or helping that students to get to Christopher News Board and complete there, or complete a workforce development certificate that's worth $17 in the market. Our average is about 60%. We know we need to do that. After 10 years, our need to provide remediation really has not changed. And so now we want to take our assets, move them into high schools with our willing partners to see what we can do to help. Career coaches have changed the game, and now this collaboration among faculty members, K-12, and post-secondary also changed the game. Stakes could not be higher. When a governor-elect walks in the room, I watched the governor-elect campaign through Twitter. I was following it through Twitter. And it was quite a compelling campaign. I don't know how many thousands of miles we're on, but one day you're out west, next day south side, next day up in the north. And one of his campaign flags that he waved every time was the need to produce more degrees in the Virginia economy. And it wasn't 70,000 he talked about. That was the Democrat. Bob was talking about 100,000. About 100,000 over a decade. For all the reasons that I just articulated, because the stakes were that high. And unless we do so, we will continue to drift on a competitive basis. So I was particularly thrilled to watch Bob campaign. And one of his major flags was to do whatever he could in his administration to produce more degrees in the economy. Not just for economic reasons, but for all other kinds of social benefits. So, Bob, we're delighted that you're here to join this group, because this is a group of education officials from all sectors, legislative leaders in here. We have some policy leaders in here to see what we can do to help more young people get prepared to go to college. Bob's a friend of all of us. We've known him throughout his career. It's a career of public service, not only in the Army, but he retired lieutenant colonel, as a prosecuting attorney, as a delegate to the General Assembly, as an effective attorney general, and then as someone that was interviewing for his next job for the past year. So, friends, help me welcome Governor-elect Bob.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Really appreciate it. I know you need a little few calisthenics there. Thank you, Dr. McDonnell, for that very nice introduction, warm introduction. I appreciate it. It's nice to hear people still calling me Bob. I got all these new titles now. And I appreciate all of you from academia, both K-12 and higher ed, and leaders from around the state to be here today to talk about this critically important issue of training young people to be the best and brightest that they can be for the future. It's a top priority for me. I'm sorry I missed Governor Kaine, but I do want to thank Megan and the Governor's Cabinet that are here for this nice introduction, and for all of Governor Kaine's efforts to work with you leaders in education, and his role as chairman of the SREB for the last year, and the initiatives that he's helped working with you helped to put forth to improve opportunities for young people. I wanted to tell him
I really enjoyed reading his budget. It's made me sleep like a baby. I wake up every 2 hours crying. He and I have had a couple of nice meetings already on the challenges facing the Commonwealth. Governor Kaine and I actually were good partners together, and I want to applaud him again publicly. He's just been outstanding with this transition and opening up his leadership to our incoming team. And it just couldn't have gone any better, and it wouldn't have happened without his help. Pat, I appreciate everything that you've done as well. I know we've got several leaders that are here today. I know Dave Spence is here from the SRB. Dave, thanks for coming and your good work with us here in Virginia. It's great to have the governor being the president. I know Superintendent Wright is here, Dan LaVista, President Tribble, and Chancellor Dubois, and others that have been leaders across the state. And I really want to say I applaud you for your lifetime commitment to making sure young people have every opportunity in the state to use their God-given talents to pursue the American dream. I really think that's what the purpose of education really is all about. I've benefited from many degrees. In fact, I got so many graduate degrees, my wife said your next degree is a divorce decree. You need to get a job. So but I do know that going to school was a big help in my life, and thus being able to have a world-class K-12 and higher ed system is a top priority for me. I still remember those TV commercials when I was growing up. I remember seeing a couple of you here with gray hair. I remember my dad reiterating that motto that was drilled into our head. If you want a good job, you need a good... And so you guys got it. That's exactly right. And I think that's even more true today in an increasingly competitive and global economy with more specialization. These challenges are even more intense. I think, and I'm glad you got all those Twitter messages, Glenn. That's really terrific. But I remember many of them were on the whole issue of job creation and economic development. I think that's the top theme of our campaign. It'll be my top priority over these next 60 days. And beyond, but having a terrific education system is part and parcel of both the short and long-term strategies to making sure we, in fact, have every opportunity for Virginia to stay at the forefront as the most business-friendly state, as the best place in America to raise a child. You must have a great education system in order to make sure that those goals are attained and that status is maintained. Because I think it affects the quality of life. Young people in some of our schools where we don't have full accreditation start out with, I think, one arm tied behind their back. I'm going to do everything that I can as governor to find every way to have turnaround specialists working with local school boards to turn those schools around so that every young person does have the constitutional guarantee of a free and quality public education regardless of where they live or what their socioeconomic status is. As Glenn mentioned, one of the top goals for me will be to try to expand those opportunities both in person and online for more young people to go to college. I think we're graduating now. Approximately 38% of Virginians have the opportunity to go to and graduate from a Virginia college, but we have about 42% of our population that's actually college educated, meaning about 4% or so of that mix are coming from other states, meaning I don't think we have the capacity that we need. If we reach a goal of 100,000 over the next 15 years, we'll be up to about 53%, which would make us about the most educated state in the country. And when we have, for instance, more technology workers in the state per capita, more government workers and more federal dollars that we get to Virginia than any state, but California, more concentration of veterans and military than any state, I think we need to make sure that we've got more opportunities for people to achieve the very best education that they can. And we need to make sure we're working together with our college presidents to make sure that there's not only greater access, but it's more affordable. And that's going to take some work over these next couple of years, and I look forward to doing that. Chancellor, I also look forward to finding ways to making the community colleges a hub for our workforce development. I look forward to, with the incoming administration, to find ways to make workforce development work better. We have a large number of programs spread across many agencies. I believe they could be reformed and improved and concentrated around the great assets that we've already got at the community colleges that know the community, that know the emerging needs of the workforce, that talk regularly with the business community. And so that'll be a goal of mine as well when it comes to workforce development. I also think that it's critically important that we train more young people in the sciences, the STEM areas, and I know that's a big part of what you've included in your systematic state college readiness initiative, or SCRI. By the way, that's a great action plan. I want to thank the SROD for putting out the model. Thank Virginians for improving that a little bit, but it's a terrific plan. I firmly believe from 21 years in the military, if you don't have a plan, you're not going to get the mission accomplished. And you all have a plan that you've all worked collectively and collaboratively together over these last months and years to put together to improve things at every level, and I'm looking forward to being an advocate with you of the SCRI. But a big part of that is science, technology, engineering, and math. As long as I can remember being in public service, we've had a shortage of engineers and healthcare workers. I think we've got to reverse that. Some of the trends that we see in the number of engineers that we graduate per capita in America compared to Pacific Rim countries is alarming. And if we don't reverse that trend in some of the hard sciences, not only will we not have young people trained for the good paying jobs of the future, but we will fall farther behind some of our global competitors, which is not good either from an economic standpoint nor from a military preparedness standpoint. I look forward to making that a big part of it, and I think both the four-year and the community college can play a tremendous role in that. I'd like you to work with me to find even greater ways beyond the strategic plan for doing things, thinking in and outside of the box to improve opportunities for young people. I believe we need more career and technical academies. I think we have 8. I'd like to double that to 16, funds permitting. But I believe your goal is outstanding, and that is that every young person in Virginia should graduate from high school either career ready or college ready. I think that's exactly the right model. Our Constitution essentially requires us to do that, and to the degree that we are not performing up to that level, we're letting down some of the young people. I think that we need to decide whether does every young person really need 4 years of high school, but are there more advanced placement and honors courses and others that can excel at a level that maybe they don't need 4 years of high school? Do they need 3? Do they need 4 years of college? I mean, we've got space constraints at both levels. If we've got people that can achieve and still hit the requirements that they need to be career or college ready, do they need to occupy the space for 4 years? I could certainly save a year of college tuition. I'm on my 4th and 5th right now, I have to say, and we need to be thinking of things like that. I think we need to have more partnerships between the private sector and our universities. Some of the things that I've seen going on now, for instance, between Rolls-Royce and UVA and Virginia Tech, outstanding partnership for the advanced manufacturing facility to be located down in Prince George County. The new engineering program that Ariba has put together with the University of Virginia to allow people to still work in a nuclear field but also get their degree in nuclear engineering, which is something we absolutely need more of in Virginia, since we've already got more private nuclear capacity. If we have some changes in federal law, this can absolutely take off as another growth segment in Virginia. How do we expand those partnerships between the public and private sector? I look forward to having more of your input on that. I also think that we need to expand opportunities for young people when it comes to alternative schools. It might be a part of the overall solution. I very much support President Obama's Race to the Top program. I know Superintendent Wright is working very closely with our incoming staff to make a grant application for our portion of the $4.35 billion that the President's made available in stimulus funds in the Race to the Top. The grant application is due January 19th, I believe, and we're really looking forward to working together to have an outstanding grant application. I appreciate Governor Kaine's support of that, because I do think charter schools and merit pay hold yet another piece of what we can do to improve education reform. We have now well documented the worst law in the country. I intend to change that this session and to allow parents and kids, particularly in those areas where we need some help, the inner cities and the rural areas, give them some other options and take some of the strictures off of the schools where they can do some innovative things through the charter school movement. I know we're getting another one here, Patrick Henry School in Richmond, in this year, and I look forward to helping. Not only would it help with alternatives, but it'll certainly help with the money. if we can get several $100 million or more for those efforts. But at the end of the day, I think it all comes back to making sure we give every young person every opportunity that they can to achieve, and secondly, that we do an even better job tying our education system and our education needs, particularly at the K-12 level, to the jobs that are going to be available in the future. 6.3% unemployment rate is absolutely unacceptable. I'm going to make that the top priority of this administration, in the near term. But having my good partnership with you in advancing the things that you know are necessary to allow more people to be trained in those fields where the well-paying jobs are going to be critical. So let me just say, look, I'm really looking forward to getting to work. I've been working hard the last 6.5 weeks trying to build a team. I do not have an announcement on the Secretary of Education yet. That'll be forthcoming soon. We've got a lot of input from leaders around the state, and we're still going through the interview process. That may actually be one of the last ones that I'm actually able to appoint, but it will be someone I hope that will be able to work very closely with you. I know there's a tremendous reservoir of expertise and knowledge and passion for excellence in this room. I really look forward to working with you, getting your input. But at the same time, I've got some very specific things that I've just mentioned that I'd like to achieve in the near term, and I'd like to ask for your help and your cooperation. The Governor of Virginia, I've talked to probably all 7 of the living governors and gotten their advice, and they've all said that this is the best job that you can possibly have. And I look at it that way and consider it a tremendous privilege and an honor to be the 71st Governor of Virginia, holding the same office of Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson. And it's still a staggering thing for me and my family to think that I've got this tremendous opportunity. But I want to hold out the olive branch here that I need your help, I need your support, and I need your advice. So we're going to be creating some forums for structured input from all of you so that we can get the best and brightest ideas out there to be able to advance the good work that the Kaine administration and Superintendent Wright and others have already done to make this, I guess, the best place in America to educate a child. I want to continue that for 4 more years. So, Happy New Year. I look forward to our continued partnership. God bless you. Have a great summer. Thank you very much.